On May 25th, 2020, George Floyd went out to buy groceries and never came home. The police were called on him after an alleged bad check was used. He did not resist arrest, and 9 minutes later, he was pronounced dead. He was murdered by Officer Derek Chauvin, who kneeled on this man's neck for 9 minutes, which is 540 seconds, that bystanders stood by, other police officers, and did not do anything. If this is shocking to you, then that is privilege, because this has been happening all the time in the United States. For whatever reason you weren't paying attention before, now is the time to pay attention. If you're not outraged, you're not paying attention, because there are so many unjust things happening in our country that have been happening, that have systemic roots in the way our society functions, and it needs to change. I'm making this video to inform other white people or anyone who wants to listen and make a change on how they can do so. I will be donating all of the AdSense proceeds from today's video to the Minnesota Freedom Fund to help in their efforts of fighting bigotry and ignorance that we so peacefully ignore in our country, and to help with bail. I will be listing helpful links and information resources in the description box below, so be sure to check that out after you watch this video. This video will not be perfect, it will not be exhaustive, but if anyone has any helpful information to share below, be sure to put it in the comments so everyone can benefit. One of the primary things we as white people have to do is educate ourselves. We cannot expect the Black community to educate us. We clearly cannot trust our education system to thoroughly educate us, so we have to take it upon ourselves, listen to podcasts, read books, read articles written by Black people, watch documentaries. Again, like I said, there will be a lot of resources. There are way too many things to list. There are seriously so many things you can do to educate yourself that are for free. So there's no excuses. You should be educating yourself on historical racism as well as present racism. You have to understand how we got to where we are, but it's also very important to bear witness on what's going on right now in our country. Understand things white people probably don't know about, which are redlining, tone policing, code switching. These are things we don't have to worry about that affect Black people's everyday lives. Know about structural versus individual racism. Individual racism is typically focused on when talking about the narrative surrounding racism in the United States. It's very individually based, rather than recognizing that the way the United States is run is actually structural racism, and it enforces inequalities among races, and it's built into the fabric of our society, and that's what needs to be dismantled in order to make change on an individual level. In recognizing the disadvantages that are built into our society, we also must recognize what benefits us of our society and how structural racism benefits us, and recognizing white privilege and trying to dismantle that, but also at the same time using it for good. So white privilege doesn't mean that your life isn't hard, because everyone struggles, but it just means that your skin tone is not one of the things causing the struggles in your life. It's very simple to understand, and you should not be getting your ego involved with it at all. It's hard to hear if you're hearing it for the first time, but it's true. It doesn't have anything to do with you. And it's important to speak out about these kinds of things, share posts on social media. It's not going to ruin your aesthetic or anything like that. We're talking about human life and human rights. It's weird that I even have to address that, but it's clearly an issue. So it's important to speak out for many reasons, but one of the reasons is that we have to speak to our other white people directly, because some white people will ignorantly only listen to white people about these kinds of issues. It's the conscious white person's responsibility to confront white people and bring other white people up to speed. But sometimes it's okay to shut up and just give support to Black voices and amplify them if you can. Share documentaries, articles, music, videos, anything like that. But also be sure that you're not putting them at risk. Be sure to only retweet or share content where protesters' faces are blurred, because mysteriously a lot of people involved with the Ferguson protests have died untimely deaths, and there's no reason. It's just best not to put these people who are putting their lives on the line at more risk. And we shouldn't be sharing any more videos of George Floyd being murdered by Officer Chauvin, because it doesn't help anyone. It's traumatizing. I've just heard, at least from other Black people that I follow on Twitter and listen to, that it is just something we shouldn't be doing, because it just is very traumatic. And this also just plays into how desensitized we are to seeing Black men murdered by police. It has a lot of layers to it. If you hear one of your friends or family members making a racist joke or even just having racist sentiment, be sure to call them out, because what allows racism to exist are these safe spaces where racism is accepted. Something you can say is just like, what's so funny about that? I want you to break it down for me. Because when you actually break down racist jokes, they're awful. Like, it's simple. Doing so also just extinguishes the safe space that surrounds covert and also overt racism, which I'll get into a little bit later. Something tactical you can do is Googling if your local police department outfits all of their on-duty officers with body cameras, and that the rules surrounding them are that they have to turn them on when they pull someone over or when an incident starts. And this is just very important. We shouldn't have to have people filming on their iPhone someone dying. There should have been footage of this man murdering George Floyd from his body camera. And there's nothing good to say about this. It's sad that this has to be a thing, but it's also very important. If you are a teacher or a parent, you have the power to influence young minds in a positive way. Make sure your children are learning all about Black history, not only slavery and not only the triumphs and the modern day successes. We need to learn about everything in between, all the good, all the bad, all the ugly. Just meet them where they are as kids, of course, but they need to know. Despite the racial makeup of your house or your classroom, it's important that different hero figures are shown of all shapes, sizes, races, religions. It's important to have diversity and not just show that there's one kind of hero, which is a white man, which is very typical. And if you have this sort of authority with children in this way, make sure that you're checking yourself and assessing the own biases that you have that may inadvertently be negatively affecting Black children or the Black community at large. Something to be aware of is you don't need to call the cops on every little thing. You may be putting people in your community at risk. It's unfortunate, but it's just the truth. It's the sad reality, because we should be expecting police to protect us, and that's just not the case. Support Black-owned businesses. I'm also going to be leaving some links about this below, but I'm sure you guys have never heard of Black Wall Street. It's something that I didn't learn about in school. I'm sure 99% of the people watching this video didn't learn about it in school, but it was a very affluent Black neighborhood in Tulsa, Oklahoma that was destroyed in May of 1921 by racist attacks. The city was burned to the ground. When you remove wealth and property from a community, you remove power, and that's what was going on at play here. The city was mainly surrounded by poor white people, and they were so jealous. They wanted to extinguish the growth of the Black community, and that's not right, and that's still happening. And a lot of the reason that this happened is because of the police and the media in this case, because they were very involved in brewing the animosity towards this community. There were news articles saying that the KKK should come in. Like, people were basically encouraged by their media, and 99 years later, the police and the media are still heavily involved in this animosity, and nothing's changed. It's also important to put your money where your mouth is. Donate if you can. Voting with your dollar is a real thing. Again, I'm leaving a ton of donation links below to support George Floyd's family, different bailout funds, different educational initiatives. So please be sure to donate if you can. Again, all the proceeds from this video are being donated to the Minnesota Freedom Fund, so feel free to share this video, because the more views, the more money, the more I'm able to donate, and the more people I'm able to educate. You guys can skip your daily avocado and coffee to donate that money. It makes a difference, and encourage your friends to match you via social media. It's actually been a very effective method of getting more people to donate on Twitter. If you're watching this and you have a platform, I encourage you to use it for good. Speak out, share things, do all that you can, and maybe even make a video like this. Call people in power, whether that's your governor, your senator, different heads of companies that profit from prison labor, or call your legislators to decriminalize weed, for which Black Americans are arrested far more frequently than white Americans for having marijuana on them. It's very disconcerting, and it's especially disturbing because white Americans are more likely to consume and use weed than Black Americans. When you call these places, tell them you're upset, demand change. There's a lot to say about this topic, so I'm leaving a very helpful link below about how to call people in power, and I hope that it helps you guys. I hope that it'll help me. Also, to a lot of people, this inappropriately seems small, but cultural appropriation is very important to recognize, and also it's really tacky, so don't do it. I also just want to wrap this up by highlighting what covert versus overt racism is, and I think this is insanely important to realize because a lot of people don't recognize what is racist and what is not. So there's this triangle right here where the things that are typically not socially acceptable to do or say are listed at the top. And these are the kinds of things that can get people in trouble, basically. So they're all wrong. However, everything below the line is things that are typically just still accepted in society, but still perpetuate negative stereotypes, reinforce the structural racism I was talking about, and don't help anyone. And they're so offensive and belittling, and it's just important to recognize. If you haven't known this before, know it now. Study this, learn it, read the books. A lot of these things on the bottom are experienced by Black people every day, being the Black token friend, Black women, Black girls being treated like they're adults. It's a real problem. Backhanded compliments like "you're so articulate," that is offensive. And sometimes being a white ally can be seen as a pick-me. Don't do it because you want to be popular or because you want to be liked by the Black community. Do it because it's the right thing to do and because you have the power to do so. At the time this video is being posted, Derek Chauvin has been arrested and charged. However, this does not indicate at all that justice has been served, both in this instance and in this country. The fight is not over. I want to close this video with a quote by Banksy that says, "They say you die twice. One time when you stop breathing, and a second time when somebody says your name for the last time. Never stop saying their names."